Welcome back. Well, both Microsoft and Tesla had their results late last week, and big tech has done very nicely, thank you very much, during COVID, but all just as the antitrust probe is hotting up in the US.
You're right. Well, joining us to unpack it all, Kosha Gada, Managing Director at Recastled, a media and tech incubator and advisory firm. Kosha, welcome back. Let's kick off with Microsoft. How were the expectations were high, obviously. How were the results? And then we've also got that little bit of a dispute with Slack, haven't we? Who's put a bit of a competition claim in, anti-competition claim in Europe.
Right, and good morning. Good to be back with you. Look, we talked about this a little bit last time, how the pandemic has set up this tale of two economies, and the tech sector continues to be a beneficiary of it. Microsoft's earnings is the latest reflection of that. Their revenue was up 13%. I know they took a little bit of a hit because it was below expectations, but all in all, solid performance. Most of their revenue is driven by the cloud platform business, Azure. The Xbox content and services like Minecraft would be the most commonly known game that they have, and others in that. And a little bit around Teams, which, yes, is growing in popularity and taking on a bit of a hit from Slack, as you mentioned. But all of those sort of fit with their CEO's new vision of pivoting Microsoft into more and more of a digital business, which has very high margins, and they've continued to see strong growth in those areas.
And the hint around Azure, because we did get some sort of market share. Is that a hint that some of the competitors like Google and Amazon are nibbling away a bit?
Yes, and so they're sort of trying to catch up to Amazon, which I think has about 50% market share in the cloud space right now. And again, they're just big beneficiaries of anything, whether it's Zoom or anything else that's taking off right now in the pandemic. A big chunk of that revenue flows back to AWS, and then Azure is sort of trying to close in on that and gain market share a little bit. I think they're about 15% of the space, but it's definitely an ever-growing, ever-expanding pie, and they're hot on the heels.
And just moving on to Tesla now, of course, car sales in general around the world have been really badly hit by the recession, but is there much of a sign that it's affected the high-end market too of Tesla?
So Tesla, definitely the fan favorite story of the week, as it always tends to be. And look, it was very well received by the market. There's no denying that. But what remains really interesting about Tesla is kind of this dichotomous situation where if you look at the fundamentals, the financial fundamentals, they remain mixed at best. Since their launch in 2003, they've posted losses of almost $7 billion, though the last 4 quarters they have posted a profit. They've always had razor-thin free cash flows. In recent times, as we mentioned, Adam, because of the coronavirus pandemic, they've seen a decline in sales, and so they've had to slash prices. Despite that, though, the market continues to rally around the stock. Another very interesting thing about them is their growth and the profits that they posted in this last release. It is really artificially inflated by the sale of these tax credits. There's sort of a regulatory advantage in the U.S., and they sell these tax credits to the rival companies who don't produce as many or enough electric vehicles to meet that threshold. And if you were to take that out, I think they earn about $485 million in revenue from that. If you take that out, they would have actually posted a loss. So their profit is based on something not even fundamental to the business. But look, it's a very interesting brand story. To me, that's the biggest value driver of Tesla. And it's this perfect cocktail of this eccentric, charismatic CEO, the inherent narrative value of a company trying to, upend this 200-year-old industry. And I think that's a big thing that translates into how they seem to be doing despite the financials.
Now, look, that's fascinating. Also, of course, we've got next week the antitrust probe really digging in, and we're going to hear from some of the big tech players. The economist Ed Yardeni reckons they've got a record 25% of S&P 500 largest companies, the big six. So what are they going to have to say for themselves, do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. As a quick reminder, there are so many probes and inquiries brewing around the world against the sector right now, and this is one of that mix. It is in the House Judiciary Committee, so they don't have the power or the authority to enact laws or bring an antitrust case, but it's more really information gathering to inform future laws and regulations. So there's going to be a bit of a theatrical component to it, which I think is part of the purpose. It's the first time that you're going to have Zuckerberg, Bezos, Tim Cook, and Sundar Pichai all on the same stage raising their hand, taking an oath before the United States Congress, and that in itself is going to drive, I think, a lot of news in the cycle over the next week or so. But it's basically what they're all going after is a version of what you mentioned, Tiki, of just the concentration of power that they have. It's different for each of the 5 players, but there is an overlap on basically how they just command an increasing size of the world's audience and eyeballs, and then they essentially charge a tax, if you will, for any other player or app or upstart that wants to access the world through their portals, because they basically are distribution portals for the whole world, and that's kind of what the heart of the hearing is going to be about.
And Kosha, just 4 months out now from the US presidential election, would those CEOs that we just discussed, would they be hoping for a Biden victory, or would there be differences of views?
It's a key question, to be sure. And I think, the way to think about it is historically, Republican administrations' conventional wisdom is that they're less regulatory and more business friendly, and the Democrats will be less so. But that has not been shown to be the case for big tech. They've grown into incredibly valuable companies under both administrations. And in fact, if you look at donation flow or the track record of former executives serving in administrations and vice versa, it seems to actually favor a little bit more the Democrats. So who knows? It's quite possible that the DOJ, which ultimately rolls up into the executive branch of the presidency, could either drop or modify the antitrust case that they're currently on a path to bringing against Google, and reportedly they're looking to file charges as early as the summer. So that possibly could change under Biden presidency. We'll see. But things like this House Judiciary hearing or the states, 49 of 50 U.S. states have independent probes going on. Those will continue, as well as international probes such as the ACCC review right here in Australia and other things that are happening around the world.
Okay, Kosha, that is all we have time for, but thank you so much for those insights.
Thank you.